It was a quiet October night in Bedford, England. A devoted mother didn't show up for work, her house was spotless, her car still in the driveway, but Janet Brown was gone. And what police found inside her home would uncover a secret no one saw coming. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Noir Crime 88, where we uncover real stories of deception, betrayal, and justice every second day. Turn on notifications, you don't want to miss the next case. When a beloved neighbor vanishes from a quiet, middle-class suburb, people assume the worst: an accident, a robbery, maybe a tragic mistake. But in the case of Janet Brown, a 51-year-old administrative assistant from Bedfordshire, England, nothing about her disappearance was ordinary. She wasn't the type to disappear. She was punctual, kind, and deeply responsible. The kind of person who reminded others about their appointments. So, when she failed to show up for work on October 10, 1995, alarm bells began ringing almost immediately. Her colleagues called her home, no answer. By evening, her neighbors noticed her front lights were still on, curtains drawn, and her car still parked in the same spot. Something was wrong. And as it turned out, Janet Brown wasn't missing, she was already gone. To understand how shocking this case was, you have to know who Janet was. Janet Brown lived a quiet, structured life. Born in 1944, she worked at a local insurance office and lived alone after her divorce. Her two grown children, Simon and Claire, described her as gentle but strong, someone who found peace in her garden, her job, and her family. Friends said Janet's life revolved around simple routines. She had a fixed morning schedule, took the same route to work, and never failed to call her children every Sunday evening. There were no enemies, no debts, no scandals. But there was one thing people didn't know: Janet had recently begun dating again. A new man had entered her life. And in the days leading up to her death, that relationship had taken a dark and complicated turn. When officers arrived at Janet's semi-detached home on October 11, they found no sign of forced entry. The door was locked, the windows unbroken. But inside, the air felt wrong. The living room was neat, almost too neat, except for a faint smell of something metallic. Upstairs, in the main bedroom, detectives found the answer. Janet Brown lay lifeless on her bed, partially covered by a blanket. She had been brutally beaten and strangled. The medical examiner later determined she had been attacked sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight the night before. There were no defensive wounds, meaning she likely knew her attacker. Her handbag, jewelry, and cash were untouched. Nothing was stolen. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was personal. As police searched the rest of the house, they found one particularly chilling detail. A neatly folded shirt, belonging to a man, left on the armchair by the window. And on it, faint traces of blood. Forensic teams quickly began collecting evidence. But in 1995, DNA technology was still in its early days. Investigators would have to rely heavily on motive, witness statements, and the smallest behavioral clues. And one name began to surface again and again: Trevor Parkin, Janet's recent boyfriend. Trevor Parkin was a 46-year-old local handyman. He had met Janet months earlier when he was hired to do minor repairs on her home. Soon, their professional relationship turned romantic. Friends described Janet as glowing when she spoke about him, finally happy again after years of loneliness. But not everyone saw the charm she did. Parkin had a temper. Quiet but unpredictable. He often lost jobs because of attitude issues and had a reputation for jealousy. Neighbors later told police they had overheard arguments between the two, mostly about Trevor's drinking and Janet's desire to slow things down. She had told her daughter she was considering ending things. That conversation happened just 3 days before she was killed. When police brought Trevor in for questioning, he seemed calm. Too calm. He claimed he hadn't seen Janet since Sunday evening, 2 days before she died. He said they'd had a small disagreement, but insisted they parted on good terms. However, officers noticed something odd. He had scratches on his hands and a bruise near his neck. When asked about it, he said he fell while fixing a fence. Detectives didn't buy it. A search warrant was issued for Trevor's flat. Inside, investigators found several of Janet's personal belongings, a ring she always wore, and more disturbingly, a small note in her handwriting that read, "Please return my keys, Trevor. I need to move on." That note changed everything. It proved she had ended the relationship, and he had a reason to be angry. Weeks later, forensic analysts matched blood from the shirt in Janet's bedroom to Trevor Parkin's DNA. It wasn't a complete match, but strong enough to place him at the scene. Still, the case wasn't straightforward. Parkin continued to deny everything. Without a confession or a direct eyewitness, prosecutors feared the case might not hold in court. Then came a crucial witness. A neighbor recalled seeing Trevor's van parked outside Janet's home around 10:30 p.m. the night of the murder. The same timeframe the coroner listed as time of death. That statement, combined with the forensic evidence and his history of aggression, was enough. In May 1996, Trevor Parkin was formally charged with the murder of Janet Brown. The trial began the following spring at Luton Crown Court. The courtroom was packed with Janet's family, reporters, and curious locals. The prosecution painted Trevor Parkin as a man obsessed with control, unable to accept rejection. They argued that on the night of October 10, he went to Janet's house under the pretense of talking, but when she told him it was over, his rage exploded. He struck her multiple times before strangling her with his bare hands. The defense tried to suggest another man might have been involved, a mysterious friend Janet once mentioned. But no such person existed, and the jury didn't buy it. The most damning moment came when the forensic team testified. They confirmed that the blood stains on the shirt belonged to Trevor, and fibers from his van seat matched those found on Janet's bedsheet. After a 2-week trial, the jury took less than 3 hours to reach a verdict. Trevor Parkin was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 14 years before parole. For Janet's children, it was justice, but not closure. Their mother's gentle voice, her Sunday calls, her laughter, all gone because one man couldn't let go. Even decades later, people in Bedford still remember the shock of that case. Janet's murder became one of those stories that linger, not because of its brutality, but because it felt so preventable. Friends often said Janet was too trusting, too kind. She believed people could change, even those with dark tempers. And Trevor Parkin took advantage of that trust until it cost her life. In the years since his imprisonment, he's applied for parole multiple times, each one denied. Reports from inside the facility describe him as reclusive and unremorseful. When interviewed by a journalist in 2015, he simply said, "I lost my temper. I didn't mean to. But she made me angry." Those 7 words told the world everything they needed to know about him. Meanwhile, Janet's children have honored her memory through charity work and community awareness campaigns. Claire, her daughter, now speaks publicly about the warning signs of domestic abuse, urging others not to ignore them. "My mother was a kind woman," she said. "She thought she could calm him down. She thought love could fix him. But love doesn't fix violence." Her words struck deep, resonating with thousands of women who'd been through similar fear. When we look back at cases like Janet Brown's, they remind us that evil doesn't always come with a mask. Sometimes it comes with flowers, kind eyes, and promises that sound sincere. Janet's story is a heartbreaking example of how manipulation and control can hide behind affection, until it's too late. She wasn't killed by a stranger. She was killed by someone she trusted, someone she let into her home, her heart, her life. And in the end, that trust became the weapon. If you found Janet Brown's story as haunting as we did, remember, every case we share on Noir Crime 88 carries a message: stay aware, stay safe, and never ignore your instincts. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. we upload a new true crime story every second day. Your support helps us keep uncovering the real stories that deserve to be remembered.